A nurse brushed past her, barely slowing down. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, eyes flicking over her plain clothes. "This area's for medical staff only. The waiting room is back there." She didn't move. Her voice was calm, steady. "I am medical staff." The nurse laughed under his breath, already walking away. "Sure you are." The scene froze for a beat. Whispers, doubtful stares, the unspoken verdict of a room that had already decided she didn't belong. But they were all about to find out just how wrong they were. The sliding doors of St. Mary's General Hospital swished open, releasing a gust of cold, air-conditioned wind into the humid Atlanta night. Inside, the waiting room hummed with tension, children coughing in their parents' arms, the buzz of vending machines, the muted clatter of nurses moving between triage and registration. Dr. Maya Johnson walked in quietly, her steps measured, her shoulders straight. She wore a simple cream blouse, charcoal trousers, and carried a plain black leather bag. No white coat. No badge clipped to her pocket. Nothing to signal authority. Nothing, at least, that the eyes in this room would recognize. At the front desk, a receptionist with oversized glasses and a ponytail barely glanced up from her screen. "Next," she said flatly. Maya stepped forward. "Good evening. I'm..." The receptionist cut her off with a clipboard slid across the counter. "Fill this out. Patients first, then family. We'll call you when it's your turn." Maya didn't touch the clipboard. Her voice was calm, steady. "I'm not a patient. My name is Dr. Maya Johnson. I'm..." Now the receptionist did look up. Her eyes flickered over Maya's dark skin, her modest clothes, the absence of the white coat that usually signaled respect. A faint smirk tugged at her lips. "Right. And I'm the president. Ma'am, please don't hold up the line." Someone behind Maya chuckled. A middle-aged man in a sports jacket muttered, "She must be lost." A teenage boy leaned toward his mother and whispered, "She doesn't look like a doctor." The mother shushed him, but her eyes said she agreed. Maya stood still, the murmur of judgment pressing in from every direction. She could feel it, the weight of assumptions, the sharp edge of invisibility. She didn't flinch. She didn't raise her voice. Her gaze stayed locked on the receptionist's. "I belong here," she said quietly. The words were simple, but they carried the certainty of someone who knew she had nothing to prove, only to reveal. And soon, everyone in this hospital would learn just who she was. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly as Dr. Maya Johnson walked deeper into the hospital corridors. Her footsteps echoed on the linoleum floor, steady but unacknowledged. Nurses rushed past, interns shuffled papers, residents murmured over charts, but no one greeted her, no one offered the courtesy reserved for their own. At the nurses' station, two young residents glanced up, then exchanged a smirk. "Family members aren't supposed to be in this wing," one whispered, just loud enough for Maya to hear. "She's probably lost," the other added, stacking clipboards with exaggerated importance. Maya paused. She could have corrected them, but instead she simply stood, silent, her gaze resting on the patient board as if she belonged exactly where she was. Which she did. Down the hall, a senior nurse intercepted her. He blocked her path, clipboard in hand. "Ma'am, you can't be here. This area's restricted to staff." Maya's eyes didn't waver. "I am staff." The nurse chuckled, shaking his head. "I doubt that. Volunteers usually check in through the basement. This floor is for physicians." Before Maya could respond, a group of doctors emerged from the trauma bay, their white coats crisp, their stethoscopes gleaming. One of them, Dr. Harris, gave her a quick up-and-down glance. "Ma'am, if you're looking for a patient, security can help you. This isn't the place to wait. The words cut like a scalpel, clean and practiced. His colleagues laughed softly, moving past her without breaking stride. For a moment, Maya stood alone in the middle of the corridor, surrounded by people in white coats who saw her only as an intruder. But instead of shrinking, she straightened her shoulders, adjusted the strap of her leather bag, and walked on. The disdain was sharp, but she carried it like a weight she already knew how to bear. They still didn't know who she was. But soon, they would. The overhead intercom crackled to life. Code Blue. Incoming trauma. Multiple casualties. ER team to Bay 3. The corridor erupted. Nurses grabbed gloves and 4 kits, residents jogged toward the trauma unit, and orderlies rushed to clear gurneys. The air shifted from condescension to urgency in a heartbeat. Maya moved with them, her stride calm but quick, slipping into the trauma bay just as the double doors burst open. Paramedics wheeled in stretchers, bloodied victims from a highway crash. 3 patients, critical. The room filled with shouts and the metallic clatter of instruments. BPs dropping, 70/40. Airway compromised. Where's the attending? The residents clustered, voices rising, hands fumbling with equipment. Dr. Harris, the same physician who dismissed her minutes earlier, barked orders. Intubate now. No wait, start fluids first. Confusion. Hesitation. Seconds bleeding away. Maya stepped forward, scanning the monitors, the wounds, the chaos. She saw what no one else had caught: one patient's collapsed lung, another's hidden internal bleed. Quiet certainty filled her voice. You'll lose them if you keep arguing. Patient 3 needs a chest tube now. Patient 2 requires surgical prep, splenic rupture. Heads snapped toward her. The residents froze. Harris glared, his face flushed. Ma'am, you cannot be in here. Security. But the paramedic who'd brought in the stretcher spoke up. She's right. I saw the abdominal swelling en route. Thought it was the spleen too. The room wavered, doubt against authority. Harris sneered. Fine. If you think you're a doctor, then stay out of the way while real ones work. Maya didn't move. She didn't shout. She only set her bag on the counter, unzipping it with steady hands. Inside gleamed surgical tools, carefully arranged, and her hospital ID badge clipped to the lining. Dr. Maya Johnson, Chief of Surgery. No one noticed yet. Not fully. But the tide was turning. She slipped on gloves, her gaze fixed on the patient, gasping for breath. Someone hand me a scalpel, she said evenly. The room hesitated. The nurse who had mocked her earlier blinked, frozen. The chaos swelled around them, seconds slipping away. Maya's voice cut through the storm. If you want them to live, do it now. The scalpel landed in her palm at last, hesitant, reluctant, but given. The room held its breath as Dr. Maya Johnson leaned over the patient on stretcher 3. Her movements were swift, precise, decisive. In less than a minute, the collapsed lung was relieved, the patient's chest rising again with a steady gasp of air. The monitors stabilized. The paramedics exchanged looks of disbelief. But the residents, still locked in their pride, refused to acknowledge what had just happened. Beginner's luck, Harris muttered under his breath. Maya turned her attention to the second patient, already coding. She gave crisp instructions, her voice low but commanding. Prepare for surgical transfer, splenic rupture, probable hemoperitoneum. If you don't move now, he won't make it. The staff hesitated again, their pride clashing with the evidence in front of them. The seconds ticked louder than the monitors. Then the trauma bay doors swung open. A tall man in a navy suit strode in, his ID badge swinging. Dr. Alan Wright, hospital director. His voice cut the noise. What's the delay here? Harris jumped in, eager to defend himself. Sir, we have a civilian interfering with the team. She's giving reckless instructions and... Wright's eyes landed on Maya. His stride faltered. Silence flooded the room. Dr. Johnson? The residents blinked. The nurses froze. Harris's jaw slackened. Yes, Maya answered calmly, peeling off her gloves. I arrived 15 minutes ago. The reception desk never processed my credentials. Gasps rippled through the bay. Harris's face drained of color. You mean? Wright nodded firmly, his voice heavy with authority. Everyone, meet Dr. Maya Johnson, our new chief of surgery. The words cracked like thunder. The nurses exchanged shocked glances. The residents stared, their earlier mockery still hanging in the air like smoke after a fire. Harris stepped back, stammering, Chief of surgery. Maya adjusted her blouse, her composure unshaken. She didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. Her voice remained steady, but it cut deeper than any scalpel. Yes. And while you were doubting me, a patient almost died. Remember that. The silence that followed was heavier than the chaos had been. Every eye in the room fixed on her, no longer with doubt, but with something closer to fear. The emergency had stabilized. Monitors beeped in steady rhythm, and the trauma bay, once chaos, now held an uneasy silence. The patients were alive, but the staff stood frozen in the aftermath of revelation. Dr. Maya Johnson pulled off her gloves and dropped them into the biohazard bin. She turned slowly, her eyes sweeping across the faces of the residents, nurses, and staff who had doubted her, dismissed her, laughed at her. Her voice was calm, but sharp enough to cut through the heavy air. Let's be clear. Tonight wasn't just about medical errors. It was about assumptions. You looked at me and decided I didn't belong here. You judged me on my skin, my clothes, my presence, anything but my credentials. No one spoke. Harris shifted uncomfortably, his gaze fixed on the floor. The receptionist from earlier peeked in, pale and trembling, realizing her mistake had nearly cost lives. Maya continued, her tone steady but unyielding. While you questioned me, a patient's lung collapsed. While you doubted me, another nearly bled out. Lives don't wait for prejudice to fade. They end. Her words echoed in the bay, heavier than any reprimand. Nurses exchanged uneasy glances. Residents swallowed hard. Dr. Wright, the hospital director, remained silent, his expression tight. He knew she was right. Maya stepped closer to Harris, her gaze piercing. Being a doctor is more than white coats and stethoscopes. It's judgment, precision, and responsibility. And tonight, many of you failed, not because you lacked training, but because you lacked respect. Harris opened his mouth, but no words came. Maya turned to the entire room. This will not happen again. Not in my hospital. Not under my leadership. We will address this bias, this blindness, systematically. Because next time, the cost won't be embarrassment. It will be a life. Her voice softened, but the steel remained. I didn't come here for titles. I came here to heal. But healing begins with truth. And the truth is, every one of you has a choice. Change how you see, or step aside. The silence stretched. And for the first time, the staff saw her, not as an outsider, not as an intruder, but as the chief of surgery who had just saved their patients and demanded they face themselves. The next morning, the hospital buzzed with whispers. Word of what had happened in the trauma bay spread faster than wildfire. Nurses repeated the story in the break room, residents messaged classmates, and even patients overheard fragments in the halls. "She's the new chief. They thought she didn't belong. She saved them all." Dr. Maya Johnson walked into the conference room, this time wearing her white coat. The gold embroidery across the chest left no room for doubt. Chief of Surgery. The very same staff who had dismissed her the night before now sat waiting, nervous, restless, humbled. The hospital director, Dr. Wright, stood at her side. "We have convened this emergency staff meeting at Dr. Johnson's request. What she has to say will shape this hospital's future." Maya stepped forward, her voice calm yet commanding. "Last night revealed more than medical errors. It revealed who we are when we judge before we listen, when we assume instead of verify, when we let bias cloud our duty to save lives. That ends today." She tapped the table, where new policies lay printed in sharp black ink. Effective immediately. A mandatory unconscious bias training for all staff. A verification protocol before challenging credentials. Every professional will be respected until proven otherwise. A direct reporting system for discrimination incidents, overseen by my office. A murmur spread across the room. Some looked relieved. Others, ashamed. A few bristled. Maya's gaze swept over them. "You may not like change. But if you cannot treat every colleague and every patient with dignity, then you cannot work here. This hospital is a place for healing, not harm." Silence followed. And then, slowly, a ripple of applause. It began with a young nurse who had hesitated the night before. Then, another. And another. Until the entire room stood, clapping not just for Maya, but for the truth she had forced them to confront. Weeks later, St. Mary's General became known for more than its surgical wing. Complaints of discrimination dropped sharply. Patients reported feeling safer. Staff learned to pause before assuming. The culture began to shift, slowly, painfully, but unmistakably. In her office one late evening, Maya sat alone, her stethoscope resting on the desk beside her. She thought of the nurse who told her, "This area's for staff only." She thought of the laughter, the doubt, the silence. And then she thought of the patients alive because she had refused invisibility. She smiled faintly, not in triumph, but in purpose. This wasn't about proving herself. It was about changing the system. And that change had only just begun.